You have to develop a conscience in which you know that voting and participating is a part of the price you pay for the gift of life that you have received from the universe. That's part of the gift.
You can't hold us back. You can't hold us back. You can't hold us back.
My next guest, Reverend James Lawson. He joins us right now. Glad to have him here.
Thank you. Good to be here. Glad to see you. Thank you.
Other people call it the Civil Rights Movement. They might call it the Black Freedom Movement. But you invoke Rosa Parks in it.
Yes, I call the main energy of that period the Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolent Movement of America, rather than calling it the Civil Rights Movement.
Why?
Because in a society of male domination and chauvinism, in a society where there's been for 400 years so much sexism and racism, so much economic cruelty and oppression, the conventional perspective of history excludes too much of the history of cruelty. James Baldwin spoke about the bloody catalog of our history. That bloody catalog is more influential today in many, many people than any other facet of American history. And it's blind, it is invisible, it's unseen, and therefore many people yield to it. The 53 million white women who voted for Trump in the last presidential election were yielding to those dark forces that are invisible, but are visible if we want to make them visible. And so our movement sought to make those forces visible.
We're trying to get folks not just to vote.
Right, that's right.
But to get them to understand that voting is the end of one process, then after the election is the beginning of another process.
Voting is but one tactic that comes ever so often. In between, we have to be people deeply engaged in being informed about what our situation is, what the situation of our neighbors is, be concerned for racism, for economic injustice, for working families. So if we stay informed in a daily way, in our own neighborhood, in our own family, and around the community, then the voting becomes a major step that we're more than eager to go ahead and do. To be an engaged human being, not a distracted human being, but a human being who is what the Buddhists called mindful, to have mindfulness of where you are and what's going on around you. In a way, this is what we're asking people to do in this election. You have to develop a conscience in which you know that voting and participating in resisting the wrong in your society is a part of the price you pay for the gift of life that you have received from the universe. Trump can only be defeated by a vision and a movement that does not act like Trump, but acts like people who know that they are alive and that love and truth are the ways that we best exemplify our humanity and the gift of life.
When you saw the women who were on Capitol Hill, and when you saw the folks who were banging on the door of the Supreme Court, and then Mitch McConnell says, oh, these angry mobs and these paid protesters, and this is uncivil. How would you respond to Mitch McConnell?
Well, Mitch McConnell is one of the most crude, cruel men we have ever had a political figure in this nation and as a majority leader. He represents sexism. He does. He represents racism. He represents that whole strain of people who decided that the Supreme Court is too activist. It has to go back and interpret the Constitution as in 1896. That's a part of the movement of the so-called conservatism, which is not conservatism in the classical sense at all, but is a group that wants to preserve American society as a male-dominated, largely white male chauvinistic society with economic injustice extending to millions and millions of people.
Reverend Lawson, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks a bunch.
All right.